characters with pumpkins. Well, that girl is me. What a perfectly perfect life.
We're Animaniacs. Yeah, we are. No, I'm just kidding. I am Pragmus Alpha.
I'm Pragmus Omega.
And we're not reviewing Animaniacs today. But the funny thing is that the same cast from Cinderella 2, which includes the Animaniacs characters, also happens to show up in this film.
Today we are reviewing Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time. Now, funny story about this. You remember how Cinderella 2, after its release, they closed down the Japanese subsidiary that animated it? Funny story about that. This one closed down their Australian subsidiary.
Yes, in other words, the name Cinderella seems to be death to subsidiaries. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce a good friend of mine. Here's our new member. He's our editor.
Hello.
This guy. He's cool. Like him. All right. Anyway, so we are glad to have a member of the editing team on board with us today. And we might ask him for some interesting comments later as well as a third-party reviewer. But as for now, my opinion is the only one that seems to matter. No. And you know what? A lot of people give this movie crap, but I think it was 100 times better than Cinderella 2.
Yeah, it's difficult sitting through Cinderella 2. It's not the worst movie ever made, but it's just so bland that every minute feels like an eternity, just waiting for the movie to end. Whereas Cinderella 3 actually has, number one, a coherent plot, and number two, no strange vignettes that involve mice turning into humans. And furthermore, we have Michael Weiner and Alan Zachary.
With the music, they did a much better job than, well, I hate to pick on Brooke Allison, but they did a much better job than she did. I mean, the songs were not poppy, they were not like overblown pop songs that you forget about the next day. They were forgettable, but they weren't that forgettable. And no dubstep bippity boppity boo. That was great. That was a good touch.
I consider that a major improvement
That is
after
a
the
major
last
improvement. In addition to that, in this movie, they pretend like the events of the second movie never took place.
What about the baker?
The baker! No,
Anastasia was going to marry the baker!
And then she's a servant girl in the Lady Tremaine's house.
Honestly, by this point, this was 2007, right, when this came out?
Yeah.
I think by then, we had had so many bad Disney sequels that we had all subconsciously kind of agreed that when anyone mentioned a Disney sequel, we would just all shake our heads and say, what Disney sequel? Disney sequels don't exist. They don't exist. I have never heard of them. I have never watched them.
Lion King is great. Wait, there's a Mulan too? No, there's not. No, but to be fair, this was a much superior film. Because here, we're taking the Cinderella story and we're putting more of a dark twist on it. I liked its dark. I like how dark it was.
The unfortunate thing it suffers from is the fact that its setup is so unbelievably stupid.
It's bizarre, too.
Yes. Basically, Fairy Godmother has butterfingers. She throws the wand into the hands of evil stepsister number one, Anastasia, who is voiced by Tress MacNeille. Hi, Dot! If that wasn't stupid enough for you, she then is able to use the magic wand. Yeah, no going to Hogwarts for her. If that wasn't stupid enough for you, Lady Tremaine is able to suddenly wield the powers of Maleficent, her other obvious character prototype. And if that wasn't stupid enough for you, she manages to rewind time to the exact moment where the Grand Duke comes in fitting shoes. If that wasn't stupid enough for you, she magic ex machinas the shoe onto Anastasia's foot.
They don't give any limits to the magic powers that this wand has. They don't give any limits. Can't she just make her own kingdom and rule over her own land as queen of everything? Why does the prince need to factor into this? And
I think this would have been a more interesting story as a prequel to Maleficent if
that
she
would have been
started.
interesting.
If she used her magic to go somewhere else where she could be queen and then became the witch Maleficent.
That aside, I will say that the dark twists and turns that this takes, oh my gosh, I mean, like, the shadows, the way that the magic is used, the fact that Cinderella keeps getting beaten down again and again and again, it's great.
After a whole lifetime of getting beaten down, and then she has one night of pure bliss, the stepmother then tries to convince her that it was all a dream, and then breaks the other glass slipper. I mean, holy cow! Cinderella actually starts believing this whole setup where she didn't dance with the prince and she dreamed that whole thing, and that it was actually Anastasia who danced with the prince. And then, just to screw with Cinderella even more, Lady Tremaine magics the prince into thinking that he danced with Anastasia the last night. If that wasn't stupid enough for you, how?
Stupid, I'd say dark.
It's equal parts dark and stupid.
But it's awesome either way you slice it. It's not a bad stupidity in my opinion.
If you can forgive those 15 minutes and get past that, then yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on.
It's really dark and really interesting. But like, so as you can tell, he and I are on polar opposite ends of the spectrum. That's why we need this third party. Come on down, William.
Hello.
Floor.
Oh.
My chair. Yes. Now, so William, where do you stand on this?
Well, from what I've seen of the film, because I only joined the second part of it, so I guess I'm a little bit more biased. I didn't see the terrible, plot build-up or whatever, or beginning. I mean, I thought it was, like, from what I saw, like, it was actually, like, somewhat exciting. Like, I felt like it's like, oh, well, I wonder what happens next, and it's like, bam, Cinderella fails again, and it's like, oh, what's gonna happen next, and then like, oh, it's gonna go okay, and then bam, fails again. I just like how it has like that kind of suspense, almost, which is pretty good for, I guess, a Cinderella film.
Yeah,
I mean, especially for a children's film. Yeah, and I did like the darker elements.
Hey, actually, Cinderella's a good character in this. I liked her character.
That it really is the greatest improvement from Cinderella 1 and 2. Honestly, Cinderella 1, they are archetypes, what it's supposed to be a traditional fairy tale.
Right.
But in this one, they really strive to force her to be a dynamic character.
To chase her own happy ending.
Yeah, she was no longer able to just wait for the happy ending to come to her. She now has to change in order to take back her happy ending, which has been stolen by Lady Tremaine and Anastasia.
Yeah, just taking back her happily ever after, I think, is the best way to say that. It's just a sequel that says, well, what if this?
And honestly, as a what if scenario, it's a really cool scenario to play with, and they play with it really, really well.
It's dark.
It is.
It's dark, it's edgy, they push the envelope.
I can understand why you liked this film, because it is a different take on these characters, and it tries to really flesh out the characters in a way that we didn't see in Disney Cinderella 1, or in the sequel, Disney Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True. And honestly, I appreciate it for that.
Yeah.
I also like the comedy in it too. Like, I felt like it had
Oh,
some
yeah,
really
yeah.
funny moments. Like, it wasn't just all dark and depressing, but it also had some like funny moments. I don't know.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. What they did is they took the comedic elements and used it to offset the darker elements. So it got darker, but it also got more comedic at the same time.
There are
It was
some
good offsetting, good balance.
Yeah, there's some epic vaudeville-style slapstick going on throughout the whole entire movie.
I was legitimately impressed, because usually when Disney tries this, they crash and burn. But this time, for some reason,
in Disney
works.
Cinderella 3,
it worked. In Disney Cinderella 3, it worked. The last place I'd expect it to work, it worked.
How? How?
Like, honestly, how? How did they do it?
How did they do it?
Especially in a sequel, like most Disney sequels are pretty awful. Like,
Oh yeah, like,
much
And
awful.
especially this is a 3, which everyone
Yeah,
skips because
especially
normally the second one usually convinces you, well, they're out of ideas.
And the second one was pretty bad. So.
oh yeah.
Oh, yes, it was. The second one is awful.
We've gone over that one though, in great detail. See last review. Right here, in front of me. But that's beside the point. So what this movie does is it takes these dark elements. It knows it's a sequel. It knows it's not going to be as good as the first one. But it takes itself seriously enough that it does work as a standalone film.
And its comedic elements, it seriously takes its comedic elements and dials them up to 10 because it knows, because it's trying to be dark and depressing, the comedic elements need to contrast with it.
They need to offset.
And they need to be as hilarious as possible. And honestly, I'm really sad that the Australian subsidiary was closed after this because honestly, the animation is really great.
Spectacular. They kind of went with a more classic approach.
And even though the animation was good in Cinderella 2, this is much better than Cinderella 2.
Ahead of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what did you think about the animation? Do you have any?
Oh yeah, definitely better than the second one. I mean, the second one seemed kind of a little, I don't know, off, but the third one, like, it actually seemed pretty good. Like, some good drawings and good artwork, and
They also did a good job at like reusing some of their stock footage.
They take the stock footage from Cinderella 1, and then instead of just showing you what's being erased, they actually rip it apart. So you see Cinderella and the Prince happily ever after from the end of Cinderella 1, but then suddenly it changes as the two of them are split apart into separate parts of this green nexus. And that is really cool. Much like the dress-tearing scene from the first one, it feels violent, violating, and it honestly works really well in this case.
It really does.
And it never goes into a place where you wouldn't want your child to watch it. It still maintains its child-friendly atmosphere while still maintaining a serious and dark relationship with its subject matter.
Which is really good.
And it's honestly impressive. I honestly did not think this film was going to be that good. The setup is stupid. I will go here and back saying that the setup is stupid and completely unbelievable.
It's absolutely stupid.
If you can get past the first 15 minutes, though, there are a lot of really cool elements to this. Cinderella uses her feminine wiles and her hard work and her ability as a former servant girl in order to sneak her way into the castle. She uses her brains in order to get past the stepmother and try and steal the wand back. And then, when she's at the very depths of her depression, the prince is finally helped to realize by the mice in this...
Terrible music number.
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
It's an awful music number. It's awful. I'll talk about it. It's cheesy, overdone, terrible, and dated.
You were dancing with a very pretty girl. Pretty girl. And at midnight she ran off in such a whirl. Such a whirl. Well, her name was Cinderella. She's the servant girl you met. She's the one you want to marry. Don't forget. Don't forget. At the ball. At the ball. At the ball. At the ball. Cinderella was the maiden at the ball.
no.
One more time.
No more times. That was the worst. Not a good song.
Honestly, the problem is because the mice are given such high-pitched voices, then trying to give it to this really
Dated.
cringeworthy, almost, not even a nursery rhyme, but a call and repeat song. The kind of thing you would hear in a kindergarten
Or a
class.
Randy Newman song. But honestly, it was bad. But like, at least they get the point across that the prince is in love with Cinderella, not Anastasia. It works. So we've extolled some of the virtues of the movie. What about some of its like flaws?
The setup is stupid.
But it'd be bad to beat a dead horse with another dead horse.
But
But
honestly,
that is probably one of the biggest flaws of the movie. In addition to that less than spectacular music number that we don't need to mention.
Plus, that first song is just...
Everything's perfect, everything's great. Of course something's going to go horribly wrong in the next 5 minutes.
Of course it is. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a movie.
Well, otherwise we wouldn't have this song. You don't sing a song that says everything's perfect unless you plan on taking that perfect world and...
Unless it's everything is awesome, in which case it's just a silly, cheesy pop song for the sake of being a silly, cheesy pop song.
Which I approve of, even if it gets stuck in your head. It's kind of like Let It Go.
No.
Let it go, let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, let it go.
Which is now stuck in your head. But,
Honestly, though, the thing I have a problem with is this story. This would fit in perfectly into Kingdom Hearts 3. Square Enix, do you see this? Put this in Kingdom Hearts 3. I want badass Cinderella in Kingdom Hearts 3. Do you see this?
Now, right now.
Right now.
Do it now.
She gets stuck in this pumpkin. She has to break her way out of the evil pumpkin carriage, which is Dark Turn on the pumpkin carriage from the first one.
Which is driven by Satan.
Lucifer! Lucifer turns into a human and is driving the evil pumpkin with a possessed horse, and she has to break her way out of it, and then kick Lucifer in the face, and then she gets on the horse, and she turns into the Scarlet Pimpernel in the moonlight and rides her way back in.
Breath. Either way, it's awesome. And since we're obviously so famous and obviously so good at what we do, and obviously not just nerds that are yelling at a camera, you should do it.
This would be
You have our endorsement.
Yeah.
Story.
This is honestly a 65 out of 100. It's not... the setup is so stupid that it takes away from the rest of the story. If you get past it, the rest of the story is really cool. There's a lot of great plot twists. And honestly, there's a lot of great character development as well, but that's under character. But still, it's what makes this story so much more interesting and twisted and dark, and it really is an interesting story because it goes out of its way to create suspense, to create tension, to never let you feel safe in Happily Ever After. It is not like Cinderella 1 where it's kind of given to her because the plot demands it. In here, she has to fight for it, and honestly, that is really cool.
What do we give the characters?
Characters, well, yeah, it seems like they actually had, from what I've seen, like the part of the movie I've seen, so the second half, it seemed like the characters had more development. It seemed a lot stronger, especially in the second one, even comparable maybe to the first one, if I can dare say that. I'd probably give it like 75. I'll give it 75.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. 75.
I'm on board with that as well. Honestly, this is the thing that the movie does best. It fleshes out
It carries
character.
the characters. It carries them brilliantly. Cinderella and Anastasia especially.
It
And
flesh-
even Prince Charming.
He gets a character. He can
gets a
speak.
character. He speaks. He actually does something.
Even the king has some funny
And
moments.
the king
too,
is
so-
the king is kind of blast to the past Cinderella, like the first one. The king is interesting. He's fun. He's awesome. Great. Love him. And he has that like streak. He's like
Yeah, he's.
And
Yeah.
I love the prince's character. I love it when he discovers the mice could talk, and then he runs away, and the king is like, "What are you doing?" The talking mice said, "I." And then the king is like, "Talking mice? Well, you've gone insane." Yes, that was funny. Great comedy again with that. That was great. And so that's kind of the biggest drawback, I think. It's just some of the stuff that they do is kind of objectively stupid. Another thing we should focus on here is the animation. The animation, honestly, I thought was pretty good. We give it a 65 out of 100.
Honestly, the animation and effects are obviously much more worked on than they were in the second one. The second one had good animation for what it was worth, but this one just completely blows it out of the water. Some of these magic effects they actually try and make look like a combination of smoke and sparkly fairy
fire
dust, and yeah, the magic effects feel much more...
They feel magical.
They feel magical. They feel much more dynamic. And honestly, the animation on the characters, it looks much more like the first one. And not only that, it feels even more dynamic.
Hey, let's switch this. I think the animation is actually better than I thought originally.
Yeah,
You know what? Change out 65. Put in 70.
Right. 70 for the animation. 70 out of 100. Honestly,
Good effects, guys. Good effects.
there are great
Good job,
effects, there's
Australia.
great animation. The world feels much more dynamic.
But also classical.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would say is a detraction from the animation is the fact that they didn't update it as much. I feel like
Yeah,
they could have added a little bit more updates. At least they didn't add any clumsy 3D models. So
It knows it's a sequel, but it says, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die fighting. And honestly, I give them points for that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
that's what the 5 extra points are for. So yeah, 70. Sound and music, I'm gonna give it 65 too. It was good, but not great, I should say.
Honestly, I still really enjoyed this music because
I
it
enjoyed
was
it
a
too.
flashback to Disney's original Cinderella, where all of the theming, all of the
the
music
songs are
continues
not pop
to grow
songs.
with Yeah.
With the exception of that mouse song, which is what I'm taking off points
Yeah.
for.
Yep.
Let's just get that out there. I'm taking off points for the
Honestly,
cheesy,
it's
terrible
not-
mouse song.
And honestly, like the original, all of the music serves to heighten the tension, to heighten the suspense, to make the beautiful moments feel beautiful, to make the sad moments feel depressing.
And
the music serves.
To add to the emotions of the characters. What did you think, William,
Yeah.
of the music?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, it did enhance, like, the scenes, made it more dramatic. I felt like it went along really well with the plot. But, yeah, as we all know, that terrible scene, that kind
Yeah, the
of
mouse thing.
kind of the downer. So.
Yeah. One more time!
Yeah.
No!
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 Cinderella's on a ship that's gonna sail her far away.
So it's up to Pretty Prince to take the day.
The overall quality? 67. What do you think?
67? Not honestly overall, 67 seems pretty reasonable. I mean, it's definitely not a bad movie. I don't think I should say that though. The real thing is that it's not a great movie. It's a Disney sequel. It cannot be great, but honestly,
I wouldn't say it cannot be great. They just never really are.
yeah,
With the
I think
exception of like Pixar films.
I think the real thing is I can never really give this a great score for overall quality because the setup detracts so much from the rest of the film. Everything else is great, but that setup is too much to buy. It's just
It kind of doesn't get you into that suspension of disbelief.
yeah. I mean, it does everything in its power to try and heighten the tension, to make you feel
Which
the emotions.
it does distract some, but it doesn't distract enough from the setup. So 67 seems like an ideal score.
Yes.
But with all these scores averaged out, the average score for this is
68.4 out of 100.
that's right. We're gonna recommend that you rent it because it's worth seeing. It's just not worth buying. Don't spend a ton of money on it.
I am impressed that this is a lot better than I was expecting. It takes a really dark what-if scenario and plays really well with it. It has great plot development, and the character development is top-notch. This is the first time I've seen such a great job taking these archetypes and then really forcing them to develop, really fleshing them out. Stealing the show, once again, is Tress MacNeille as Anastasia, who actually has a lot of character development as she impersonates Cinderella, trying to take her place as the princess who lives happily ever after. And honestly,
Dot does a great job.
yeah, I love Dot.
Yeah, and I really like Yakko as well.
Oh yeah, it's nice to see you again, Rob Paulson. I'm sorry you keep getting roped into these bad Disney sequels. Honestly, you just have a great voice.
This one wasn't terrible.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
It's something
it wasn't
that-
awful.
It's something I wouldn't be ashamed to put on my resume. Anyway, so that's what we got with Pragmus today. Thank you for joining us. This is Pragmus Alpha.
This is Pragmus Omega.
And this is William.
Yeah, and hey, by the way, don't forget to subscribe because we're awesome.
And honestly, you love this content, don't you?
Yeah, you love hearing a few nerds screaming at a camera.
Hey, if they didn't, they wouldn't watch Nostalgia Critic, would they?
Shout out. Anyway, thank you very much. And if you're still watching us, I have no idea. And if you're still watching this right now, I have no idea what you're doing. Go read some books.
I just want
Yeah.
to ask for editing purposes. Are you sure you're in frame?
I'll go take a look.
I really should have mentioned it the first time I thought of it, but I didn't want to break.
You're in the
strike.
frame.
Oh, that would have been
I really just needed to check that because
Yeah, he's in the frame.
it would have been funny though if he wasn't in the frame. If he was like,
Well, if he was here, then we put him off the frame.
Or just my floating
Anyway,
head.
how far would we have to push him to get him out of frame?
Okay, let me check. All right, push him down. Further.
What?
Down lower. The top of his head's in the frame.
He's still in the frame?
He's out of the frame now.
Oh, he just has to lie down.
Yep.
Okay, get back up.
All right. So another thing is,